Napoleon worried that his vast empire would fall apart unless he had an heir whose right to succeed him was undisputed, so he decided that he needed a son. Consequently, he divorced Josephine, who had failed to bear him a child, and formed an alliance with the Austrian royal family by marrying Marie Louise, the grandniece of Marie Antoinette. In 1811, Marie Louise gave birth to a son, Napoleon II, whom his father named King of Rome. Although he had an alliance with Austria and an heir, Napoleon's own personality proved to be the greatest danger to the future of his empire. "I love power," he once said, "as a musician loves his violin." It was this drive for power that had raised Napoleon to great heights, and the same love of power led to his doom. In his efforts to extend the French Empire and crush Britain, Napoleon made three disastrous misjudgments. In November 1806, Napoleon signed a decree ordering a blockade, or a forcible closing of ports, to prevent all trade and communication between Great Britain and other European nations. Napoleon called this policy the Continental System because it was supposed to make continental Europe more self-sufficient and less dependent on trade with Great Britain. This would destroy Britain's commercial and industrial economy. Unfortunately for Napoleon, his blockade was not nearly tight enough. Aided by the British, smugglers managed to bring cargo from Britain into Europe. At times, even Napoleon's allies disregarded his order. Napoleon's own brother Louis, whom Napoleon had made King of Holland, defied the policy. For these reasons, the blockade weakened British trade but did not destroy it. In addition, Britain responded with its own blockade. The British Navy stopped neutral ships bound for the continent and forced them to sail to a British port to be searched and taxed. Because the British had a stronger navy, they were better able than the French to make their blockade work. American ships were among those stopped by the British Navy. Angered by this, the U.S. declared war on Britain in 1812. The War of 1812 that followed ended in a draw, however, and was only a minor inconvenience to Britain in its struggle with Napoleon. In the end, the Continental System hurt Napoleon more than it hurt his enemies. It weakened the economies of France and other lands under Napoleon's control more than it damaged Britain. Furthermore, Napoleon's effort to enforce the Continental System would drag him into long and bloody conflicts in Europe that would drain his manpower and resources. In 1808, Napoleon made his second costly mistake. Because Portugal was ignoring the Continental System, he sent an army through Spain to invade Portugal. When Spanish towns rioted in protest, Napoleon deposed the Spanish king and put his brother Joseph on the throne. This move outraged the Spanish people and inflamed their nationalistic feelings, since they remained fiercely loyal to their former monarch. In addition, Spain was a devoutly Catholic nation with a long history of persecuting those who deviated from the faith. Because the French Revolution had weakened the Catholic Church in France, many Spanish Catholics feared that their French conquerors would undermine the Church in Spain. In fact, the French did attack church power by outlawing the Spanish Inquisition, which was still prosecuting people accused of heresy. The conflict that followed became known as the Peninsular War, which got its name because Spain lies on the Iberian Peninsula. For 5 years, from 1808 to 1813, bands of Spanish peasant fighters known as guerrillas struck at French armies in Spain. The guerrillas were not an army that Napoleon could defeat in open battle. They were ordinary people who used hit-and-run attacks to ambush French troops and then fled into hiding. The British added to the French troubles in Spain by sending troops to aid the guerrillas in their struggle. During the Peninsular War, both sides committed terrible atrocities. In their desperation to defeat the Spanish guerrillas, the French were especially brutal. Towns were burned and many people were executed because they were suspected of being guerrillas. The famous Spanish artist Francisco Goya captured the horrors of the war in his painting, The 3rd of May, 1808, which shows a group of Spanish peasants being executed by a faceless group of French soldiers. The prisoner in the white shirt was even painted to resemble Christ on the cross. In the end, Napoleon lost about 300,000 men in the Peninsular War. These losses severely weakened the French Empire. In Spain and elsewhere, nationalism, or loyalty to one's own country was becoming a powerful weapon against Napoleon. People who would at first welcome the French as their liberators now felt abused by a foreign conqueror. Like the Spanish guerrillas, Germans and Italians and other conquered peoples turned against the French. Napoleon's thirst for power led to his most disastrous mistake of all. Even though Alexander I had become Napoleon's ally, the Russian Tsar was unhappy with the continental system and its negative effects on the Russian economy, and refused to stop selling grain to Britain. In addition, French and Russian rulers suspected each other of having competing designs on Poland. Poland was an important buffer zone between the French and Russian empires, and each leader thought the other would try to control Poland to gain a strategic advantage in Eastern Europe. Because of this breakdown in their alliance, Napoleon decided to invade Russia. In June 1812, Napoleon assembled a grand army on Russia's border. This massive force consisted of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Many of these troops were not French. They'd been drafted from all over Europe, and they felt little loyalty to Napoleon. As Napoleon's army entered Russia, Alexander pulled back his troops, refusing to be lured into an unequal battle that he knew he would lose. As the Russians retreated toward Moscow, they practiced a scorched earth policy in which they burned grain fields and slaughtered livestock, so as to leave nothing that the enemy could eat. As a result, starvation and disease quickly began to take a toll on Napoleon's grand army. Desperate soldiers deserted the French army to search for even the tiniest scraps of food. On September 7, 1812, the two armies finally clashed at the Battle of Borodino. During the morning, the advantage swung back and forth between the Russians and the French. After several more hours of indecisive fighting, the Russians retreated, giving Napoleon a narrow victory that allowed him to march on Moscow unopposed. When Napoleon finally entered Moscow on September 14th, he found the city in flames. Rather than surrender Russia's holy city to the French, Alexander had set fire to it. Napoleon stayed in the ruined city for 5 weeks, expecting the Tsar to make a peace offer, but no offer ever came. By then it was the middle of October. It was too late to advance farther, and with no supplies, Napoleon had no other choice but to retreat. Grimly, Napoleon ordered his starving army to head home. As the snows began to fall in early November, Russian raiders mercilessly attacked Napoleon's ragged, retreating army. As the soldiers staggered through the snow, many dropped in their tracks from wounds, exhaustion, hunger, and cold. The temperature fell to about 30 degrees below zero. One French soldier who survived recounted that many of the survivors were walking barefoot, using pieces of wood as canes, but their feet were frozen so hard that the sound they made on the road was like that of wooden clogs. Finally, in the middle of December, the last survivors straggled out of Russia. Of his grand army, Napoleon had only 10,000 soldiers who were left fit to fight, out of an original force that numbered around 500,000. Napoleon's enemies were quick to take advantage of his weakness after his disaster in Russia. Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Sweden joined forces against him in the Fourth Coalition. Napoleon had hoped that his marriage to Marie-Louise would keep at least Austria on his side, but Austria also joined the coalition. All of the main powers of Europe were now at war with France. In only a few months, Napoleon managed to raise another army. He faced his enemies outside the German city of Leipzig in October 1813. At this crucial point, Napoleon's army no longer consisted of trained veterans. In the Battle of Leipzig, the Allies cut his inexperienced army to pieces. Napoleon's empire crumbled quickly. By January 1814, armies of Austrians, Russians, and Prussians were pushing steadily toward Paris. In March, the Russian Tsar and the Prussian king led their troops in a triumphant parade through the French capital. Napoleon wanted to fight on, but his generals refused. In April 1814, the defeated emperor gave up his throne and accepted the terms of surrender drawn up by Alexander I. The victors gave Napoleon a small pension and exiled him to Elba, a tiny island off the Italian coast. Although the Allies expected no further trouble from Napoleon, they were wrong. Napoleon was a man of action who, at age 45, would find it difficult to retire. As Napoleon arrived on Elba, a Bourbon king arrived in Paris to rule France, Louis XVIII, brother of the guillotined king. Louis XVI's son and heir had died in prison in 1795. However, the new king quickly became unpopular among his subjects, who suspected him of wanting to undo the revolution's many economic and political reforms. The news that the French king was in trouble was all the incentive Napoleon needed to try to regain power. He escaped from Elba and, on March 1, 1815, landed in France. In a proclamation, he urged the French to rally to his cause. "Victory will march at full speed," he said. "You will be the liberators of your country." Thousands of French people welcomed Napoleon back. The ranks of his army swelled with volunteers as it approached Paris. Within days, Napoleon was again Emperor of France. Louis XVIII fled the country. In response to Napoleon's return, the European allies quickly marshaled their armies. The British army, led by the Duke of Wellington, prepared for battle near the village of Waterloo in Belgium. Knowing his only chance was to strike quickly before his enemies could coordinate their forces against him, Napoleon went on the attack. On June 15, 1815, Napoleon struck at Waterloo. The British army defended its ground all day. Late in the afternoon, the Prussian army arrived. Together, the British and the Prussian forces attacked the French. 2 days later, Napoleon's exhausted troops gave way, and the British and Prussian forces chased them from the field. This defeat ended Napoleon's last bid for power, called the 100 Days. Taking no chances this time, the British shipped Napoleon to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic. There he lived in lonely exile for 6 years, writing his memoirs. He died in 1821 of a stomach ailment, perhaps cancer. Shortly before his death, Napoleon attempted to justify all he had done during his life. "Such work as mine is not done twice in a century. I have saved the revolution as it lay dying. I have cleansed it of its crimes, and have held it up to the people shining with fame. I have inspired France and Europe with new ideas that will never be forgotten." Without doubt, Napoleon was a military genius and a brilliant administrator. Yet all his victories must be measured against the millions of lives that were lost in his wars. Of his many achievements, only his law code and some of his reforms in France's government proved lasting, and they were not won on the battlefield. A later influential French statesman and writer, Alexis de Tocqueville, summed up Napoleon's character by saying, "He was as great as a man can be without virtue." Napoleon's defeat opened the door for the freed European countries to establish a new order.